Okay, we're getting ready, and hello to the Juice Guru Academy if you're here backstage with us, and we're in the membership site, so thank you for tuning in. We've got a great interview coming up in a minute here, so let me just first get this out onto Facebook. Okay. And that's going to go into the community, and we're about to go live there. Let me just give it a minute as the stream sets up.
All right.
That's the thing about Zoom, Scott. Like, you could do these Facebook live streams of these interviews. It's great.
That is cool.
We're there.
All right.
Hello to the everyone in Facebook, in the Juice Guru community hanging out. We will be taking some questions later. You'll be able to type them in below. And if you're watching the interview after the fact as part of the Academy, you can always type in questions and we can follow up with Scott. So let me just shut Facebook for now so we don't get any distraction. And hi, Scott. How are you? This is the informal part.
I'm doing great. Thank you, Steve. How are you?
Good. And we're here with Scott Stabile. How's that, Scott? I said that right that time?
No. Stabile. Soft
Stabile.
Yeah, Stabile. Close. You got the Beal part right.
You know, I can't even write phonetic, it seems. So I'm gonna pronounce your name, and this is for the radio. Of course, we want to say it right. We're gonna say Scott Stabile.
Mm-hmm.
Did I get it right that time?
Yeah, Scott Stabile.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stabile.
Stabile. Yeah.
I just said Stabile.
Stabile. I know, but it was close.
Let me ask. Do you have my name? What's my last name? Let's see if you got that.
Prusik.
It's Prusak. So we're both. We're getting there though.
Prusak. Yeah, not Prusik. Prusak.
Prusak. And Scott Stabile. That's as long as we can learn each other's names, we're in a good place. So Scott is the author of the new release, Big Love, The Power of Living with a Wide Open Heart. And we're going to hear all about that and more. So if you're in the Juice Guru community and you're just tuning in, thank you for being here. This is going to be a lot of fun. And if you're part of the Juice Guru Inner Circle and Juice Guru Academy, well, you get first dibs on this. This will be in the membership site, and you can tune in and see what we're up to. So I'm going to go ahead and get ready, Scott. If you want to grab a drink or a juice, we're going to start the interview in a minute here.
Yeah, I'm good. Got my water beside me.
So this is where we really tune into what we're saying, the audio part of the interview, and this will be on the radio. So let's get started. This episode of Juice Guru Radio is brought to you by Try Best, Making Healthy Living Easy, and our new book, Juice Guru, Transform Your Life by Adding One Juice a Day. Hello and welcome. Welcome to another edition of Juice Guru Radio. I'm your host, Steve. It's so great to be with you on today's show. We've got Scott Stabile. He's the author of the new release, Big Love, The Power of Living with a Wide Open Heart. He's here to tell us all about how we can love bigger, better, and it's our greatest healer. Let's find out all about it right after this with our special guest, Scott Stabile. Did I get the name right?
It's perfect, though. I'm loving how you're saying my name, honestly. So keep it.
Just say it one more time, so when we come back from the break, I can at least say it correct.
It's just Stabile. You're saying Stabile, but it's just Stabile.
But I
really don't mind, honestly. My name would be pronounced Stabile if we said it right.
I don't know why. I haven't had this issue, so it's very interesting. I can't get your name.
Yeah, it's all right.
So let me just say it right, and before we come back from the break, and I want to make sure I have it. Is it Scott Stabile?
Perfect. Exactly.
Jeez. I'm going to re-record that. Scott Stabile.
Perfect.
Okay. Can you record that intro in again one more time? No one will ever know this happened except you in the Academy and you guys on Facebook watching. No one will ever know that I can't pronounce names.
I'll know.
Hello and welcome. Welcome to another edition of Juice Guru Radio. I'm your host, Steve Prusak. And today's show, we've got Scott Stabile. He's the author of the new release, Big Love, The Power of Living with a Wide Open Heart. We're going to find out how to love bigger, better, and how love is our greatest healer right after this. So grab a juice, some water, some tea. We'll be back right after this with Scott Stabile.
That was perfect. Your shade's opening behind your head. It started to creep open.
Right?
I didn't want it to knock you in the head.
No, that would have been... Okay.
It would have been funny, but...
It is one of those... Thank you for that. Okay, are we ready? Let's come in from the break. Hello and welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of Juice Crew Radio. I'm your host, Steve Prusak, and today we've got Scott Stabile. He's the author of the new release, Big Love, The Power of Living with a Wide Open Heart. His inspirational posts and videos have attracted a huge and devoted worldwide audience. He's a passionate speaker and love advocate, and he runs day-long empowerment workshops nationally and internationally, and by the time he's done with me, he'll be doing it online. Let's welcome to the show right now, Scott Stabile.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Steve.
Scott, thank you so much for being here. We've been wanting you on the show, so thank you for taking the time today.
Absolutely.
So tell us about your journey and how, the role, I guess we're going to talk about Big Love and what's that played in your life. We'd love to hear about your journey to start spreading the wisdom about this.
My journey, let's see. When I was a wee boy, I would say my journey in my life, the most profound event that happened to me in my life was when I was 14 years old and my parents were shot to death in their market in Detroit, which obviously completely changed everything about my existence. I was the youngest at the time, the youngest of 7 kids, so lucky to have siblings with whom I was very close to help during that time. And, 9 years after my parents' death, I lost my brother, one of my brothers. He had been addicted to heroin his entire adult life, and he OD'd on heroin and died. So there's been a lot of family trauma, in the earlier part of my life for sure. And it wasn't until my 20s, kind of early to mid 20s, when I graduated college, I moved to San Francisco. I got a job at a new age gift store in the Bay Area, and it was my introduction to the new age, I guess. It was my introduction to the idea of enlightenment and the idea of love and peace as a mission in life outside of career and money and all these things. It was the first time I started reading books, self-help books and spirituality books, and meeting people who were really committed to being more compassionate people, and talking about it and working on their path and their pain and their healing and all these things. And it was, for me, it was my first introduction to it in this way, but I felt totally at home. Like, this felt like, okay, I get this. This feels good. I like this. So that's really, I feel like, when my journey to love started in a different way, in a more conscious way. Dealing with the loss of my parents was, all I did was lock it away and bury it. And that felt more subconscious than anything. It felt like a survival instinct, because I don't think at 14, I don't know how I would have handled it differently. I don't think I could face the grief, and I couldn't really face the rage I felt. It could have buried me, frankly. So something in me knew, like, okay, let's put that away, move on with your life. And once a year I had a really good cry, and then would move on with my life, and was a really good student and had lots of friends and went to a good college and all of that. And it wasn't until I moved to San Francisco and started this job and was, that I awakened to a different potential path in my life. And what I was learning through reading and what was really resonating with me was that part of that path is rooted in love and the energy of love, and understanding that no matter what's going on in our lives, we can still choose to operate from a place of love. And what I started to see is, the more often I made that choice, the more meaning I would find in my life, the deeper the connections I would establish with other people. And just, it was life-changing, really.
Well, they say from hard times, good things come, or from small things, big things come. But what an awakening, or what a journey to experience that is such. As we're going into the prime of our life at 14, mm-hmm. and then to bury it, which I think a lot of people do, and I think a lot of people bury it, and maybe you spend a whole lifetime not even dealing with it,
Absolutely.
Whatever that trauma is.
Absolutely, I think that's the choice of many. I mean, the first chapter in Big Love is called Dig. And the point of that chapter is to encourage people to do exactly what I didn't do at 14. And I'm still thankful I didn't do it at 14, but in my 20s, I really started to. And it's the idea that we can be honest with our pain. rather than trying to hide it, rather than not acknowledging what's real inside of us, because human beings were so afraid to feel uncomfortable, so we're numbing ourselves constantly with things, we're escaping constantly simply to avoid being present with sadness or grief or rage or whatever it is that's going on inside. And what I found in my life, in my experience, is that when we build walls to feeling, we can't be selective about those walls. If we're putting a wall up to keep from feeling our darkness, we're putting a wall up to keep from experiencing the breath of light as well. And it was only when I really started to allow for my grief in a different way, and allow for my sadness, and allow for whatever it was happening within me, that I started to see I was also at the same time allowing for so much more beauty and so much more connection and so much more light in my life.
So to get to that place, is there a process of letting go of that anger or dealing with that grief in a different kind of way to unravel the love or to get into more of the light? What was the process for that like?
For me, it was just about feeling it. I think that I'd spent so much time hiding it and not feeling it that I don't really believe in rules around grief and rules around healing. They say they're the 7 stages or the 6 stages. And I think grief is a pretty, it can't be enclosed in a box, and we all experience our grief however we're experiencing it. And I really believe that that's okay. I don't think that it serves anyone to put pressure on them to go through a routine in their grief, because then we're going to end up feeling like we're doing something wrong in the midst of this overwhelming grief to begin with, which is already enough to deal with. So for me, the process was just like, I think that we can, if we're open to being with our pain, and if we're open to the possibility of healing, we are going to be shown countless paths to that healing. So I like good books. I love podcasts like this that dive into the human experience. There are any number of teachers and resources out there. But if we're not open, if we really don't want to face who we are from an honest place, no number of podcasts and books and resources out there is going to make any difference if we're shut down. So really, it's just about openness. It's about a dedication and a commitment to our healing. And with that commitment, you find your way there.
Well, I know a part of your journey was discovering self-love, the acceptance of yourself and what that means in your teachings. And so how can we all benefit from loving ourselves more?
Oh my gosh, in countless ways. I mean, one, I want to say that I don't pretend to be someone who's always loving myself either. And I don't pretend to be someone who's always loving everyone else. I'm very committed to operating from love. And I'm always asking myself, how can I bring more love into this moment? But I can be a jerk like everyone else. And I'm certainly self-abusive like everyone else. I mean, our minds go so naturally to self-criticism and the inner critic. But the benefits of self-love are endless and profound. I mean, basically, if you want to live an authentic life, if you want to live a life of truth, that practice is rooted in self-love, because if we're not connecting to ourselves from a loving place, we're not going to feel comfortable living truthfully. We're not going to feel comfortable showing up in the world authentically. So self-love fuels those choices, fuels that decision. It fuels how we present ourselves to the world. And I think, as you know, and as anyone knows, whenever we're operating from this place of real truth and authenticity, even if it's fleeting, it's such a powerful place to come from, and it creates a space for others to operate from that place as well.
We live in a world now where self-love is hard for people, especially when we look at social media and the world we're living in, and people are posting things and showing how great their life is, and people are experiencing things like jealousy, or why isn't my life that good? Or maybe they're seeing lives that aren't that good and feel better about themselves, and it's kind of like cycle or circle of negativity that comes with it. How do we overcome that and avoid the negativity that comes with much of what's being thrown at us every day?
I don't know that we can avoid it, because it's everywhere. And I don't know that we need to avoid it. I think that we're well served by figuring out ways to find more peace within it and to take care of ourselves within it. I mean, in terms of social media, I think we all know that people tend to put forward their best face on social media. And it is easy. I mean, with Facebook and Instagram, there is a lot of envy out there, and there is a lot of negativity people are feeling by seeing these curated lives that aren't perfect, obviously. But what I've had a profoundly different experience on my Facebook page and in my Instagram feed, because I've made a commitment in my social media world to share the pains, the insecurities, to share like the full reach of my story, and not just like the good stuff and the triumphs, but everything. And so what I notice is whenever I'm sharing my insecurities and my fears and the hard stuff, it's always when I get the most comments on any of my posts. And the comments are always like, thank you, it's good to know I'm not alone, or I want you to know you're not alone. And what we do, so one of the ways we can deal with, if we're overwhelmed by these picture perfect curated social media things, we can show up in a different way. We can show up with a little more vulnerability. We can show up with a little more willingness to share the full story, and then connect with others who might bring that same sort of willingness. So then we're creating a community of people who are able to say, like, I'm struggling a lot of the time. I don't have it all figured out. And we realize that that's everybody's story. No matter how perfect your Instagram feed looks, we're all struggling a lot of the time. No one has everything figured out. And let's connect to each other from that place and see where we can go.
You're listening to Scott Stabile right here on Juice Guru Radio. Is the author of the new release, Big Love, The Power of Living with a Wide Open Heart, available now at bookstores worldwide, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, all the usual places. Isn't that right, Scott?
That's right, yeah.
And what's your website, just so people can have a look at the work you're up to and see where your workshops are taking place?
Sure. My website is scottstabile.com. So it's just my name.com. And then I encourage you, if you're drawn to, find me on Facebook, because that's where I do a lot of my stuff.
Okay, great. And we'll have a link up to that at juicegururadio.com under the show notes for this show. And if you're in the Academy, you'll get that in there too. So, Scott, you talk about fear. How do we get in touch with our fear and start to overcome that when a lot of us could be blind to what our fears might even be?
Well, if you're anything like me, getting in touch with your fear is pretty easy, because I'm afraid all the time. I think we're confronted with our fears all the time. And what I've learned is to have a very different relationship with my fears. So some of the more common fears: fear of change, fear of being judged, fear of the unknown. I used to always see my fear as this bully, this tyrant, and I used to cower to it all the time. And I never really considered that my fear is really just trying to protect me. That's fear's job. It's not out to hurt me. It's out to protect me. It doesn't want me to be judged and to be condemned and to be afraid and all these things. But it doesn't always do its job very well. We've evolved to have a lot of fear for survival. It's been necessary in our lives, and it's still necessary. But what I've noticed about my fear is it views like running into a burning building the same way it might view needing to have an uncomfortable conversation. Fear sees it as something scary. So it's like, don't do it, avoid it. Don't submit your book proposal. You could get rejected. Don't do it. You know what I mean? It's always saying no, 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 but from an unintelligent place most of the time. So one thing I encourage people to consider having a different relationship with their fear. Now I don't view my fear as a bully as much as like a pain in the butt little brother. A 5-year-old who's always nagging at you and tugging at your shirt and like crying out all these complaints. And I've become much better at kind of shooing it away, listening to its complaints. I'm a creative person, and I share my creativity with the world. So there's always fear involved. Anytime I put anything out there, there's that voice of like, people are going to hate what you're saying. People are going to judge you. So I recognize, look, my fear is going to have a say, but I don't allow it to have its way. It can have the sidecar, but it can't have the steering wheel. And the more we do that, the more we see that the fear doesn't necessarily disappear. It's always going to be there, but we can still move forward and make brave choices in our lives, and despite our fear and with our fear.
So what's the journey? When we pick up your book, we're going into it with wherever we are on our journey. Where can we expect to be at the end? When you're talking about big love and self-love and love for others, where can we expect from this journey?
Well, I mean, Big Love is a collection of personal essays, first and foremost. So it's a memoir in that way, and each essay focuses on an experience in my life that pulled me from my center, and the tools I use to find my way back. And some of those experiences, like the loss of my parents, are very heavy. Many of them are everyday experiences. You know, it's like being on an airplane and being provoked by something that happens. And you know what I hope people come away with from the book is a few things. One, that they feel less alone in their journey and less alone in their struggle. I hope that they consider choosing love in their lives more often, because what I found out is that when I was looking at all of these chapters, and one of the chapters focuses on kindness, and one focuses on compassion, and one on forgiveness, one on authenticity, one on shame, when I was looking at it all, it always came back to love. You know, it was always like I found my way back to center by reconnecting to the love that I believe is at my core and at all of our cores. Like love was the force that was always walking me home, even though it looked like kindness, but kindness is nothing more than love in action. Forgiveness is nothing more than love in action. Like all of these profound, beautiful things that we're experiencing in life, when we trace them back to their base note, we're likely to find that at the root, it's love, the energy of love. And so I hope that people will connect to that in what they're seeing. And also remember that you don't have my grief. You can't connect to my exact experience, but you have your own grief. Like people are so much more alike than we are different. And when we remember that and we make ourselves available to putting ourselves in another person's shoes and connecting with people through empathy, it's life-changing. And we're living in a world and in a country that is desperate for empathy. We are void of empathy in so many of our dialogues that are happening out there. And we have to take responsibility for how we're showing up to those dialogues and what we're bringing to them.
I was just going to bring that up because there is so much division in the world right now in this United States. And how do we deal with that and overcome that? A lot of anger, more so than ever before. How do we address that?
We address it by looking at how we're showing up. You know, I see anger can be a very positive catalyst. When I'm angry, it's usually because something feels unjust. You know, if I'm being angered by something, especially in the world, it's often about an injustice. So as a catalyst, anger is great. I don't think anger is ultimately the healer. Like anger alone is not going to get us to the other side of anything. It's just going to fuel more violence, more rage, more disconnection. But if you're on social media and somebody is posting something enraging and they're doing it in a way that isn't friendly, isn't kind, how are you choosing to show up to that dialogue? Are you adding more fuel to that fire? Or are you choosing to step back and imagine what it's like to walk in that person's shoes, imagine what it's like for them in their lives and their struggle, and then choosing to show up to the conversation with more compassion and with more love? Because it's super easy to complain about how everyone's communicating and to complain about the division, because it's heartbreaking. But if we're just showing up the same way and raging and being crazy, we're only contributing to it. You know, Steve, ultimately, I believe all we can take responsibility for is ourselves and our own actions. And that's why what I'm encouraged by is that as divisive as it is out there and as dark as it is out there, more and more people are stepping up and saying, like, I believe in love. I believe in connection. I don't believe we're that different. I'm going to make noise for these things. I believe in speaking up when I see injustice. And I believe in spreading light. And more people are doing that. And so I'm encouraged at the same time that I'm disheartened.
You know, John Lennon said, "Love is the answer."
Yeah.
Yeah, he said it. You know, he said it in the song "Mind Games," but the Beatles said it too, and it came out, "All you need is love." I mean, these are themes we know. And when you went into those stores earlier on, like the New Age stores, reading those books, and what were some of the processes that you were doing? Was it meditation? What kind of things were you doing in your daily practice to help you get into touch and evolve? What would you say were like the top 3 things, maybe?
Well, I mean, writing is a great source for me of personal exploration. So now I'm not even just talking about writing things that people can read. I'm talking about when I'm feeling enraged, can I vomit some of that energy out of my body and onto the page and see what's really going on. I think I really encourage people to, excuse me, to explore themselves, to figure out like what's really going on, what's the deeper truth. In writing, you would be amazed if you start to write and you think you don't have a sense of things, or you think you don't remember things, but you start to, get it out there. You'd be amazed at what new realizations you'd have. I'm a big fan of meditation. I don't do it as regularly as I would like to, but I think meditation is a great way to go within and to find peace. I like to take long walks outside, but I really also want to encourage people to find what works for them, because in my experience, if we put energy into figuring out how to feel more whole and more grounded and more at peace, we're going to find the things that work for us. That might mean meditation for you. It might mean yoga for someone else. It might mean dancing your butt off in your apartment a half an hour a day, but what works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you, and vice versa. So once we figure out what works for us, then it's incumbent upon us to make time in our lives to do those things. So more than anything, I just try to make space in each day to do the things I know I love to do. And part of that is like getting out of my apartment. I'm a writer, so I'm alone a lot, and I'm in my head a lot, and I'm inside a lot. And I find that by the end of the day, if I've spent all day indoors, I'm almost certain to feel off. And it's like the moment I step outside, something shifts. So if you're finding yourself doing things that it's not allowing for more peace, more happiness, more fulfillment in your life, look at that. Think about how you can shift it. What new things can you integrate into your process to create more potential for peace and joy in your life, and then do those things.
Now, the name of the book is Big Love, The Power of Living with a Wide Open Heart. Scott, who did you write this book for?
Oh, I think for all of us, because I wrote it for people who are struggling out there to make sense of this unpredictable reality and their own experience within it. So I really believe it's for all of us, in that we all know everything. I see human beings as the ugliest of the ugly to the most beautiful, and everything in between. We all feel envious and jealous, and we all feel joy. We all want love. We all want to give love. We all want the same things. So the book is for everyone.
Right, we're more alike than we are different. I think that's what it is. That whole isolation thing. We're thinking that, or the idea of people needing you to be just like them. So people will find things to say, well, you're like that, I'm like that. And then, finding the common ground. Isn't that part of it?
Well, absolutely. We all want to feel accepted. And so one of the ways we try to do that is to, like you were saying, figure out the ways in which, I think we do that in a negative space, is when we're trying to fit into a mold of how we think we're supposed to be. I think the positive of it is from the empathetic place of recognizing that we really are all alike. So I don't want to be like you in terms of like how you're choosing to dress and what kind of car you drive and stuff like that. There's really no value in chasing after those similarities, but recognizing like you are a person like me who wants love in his life and who's probably doing the best to give love to other people. That's a powerful way to connect with other people and their similarities.
Great, Scott. Well, what are your plans for the future? So now we've got a book tour coming up. Can you share with our viewers and listeners what you've got going on, and how we can stay in touch? Again, we'll have the link up at the website, and we said Facebook, but can you tell us about what you've got planned for the future?
Yeah, sure. I can tell you what I have planned for the now. The book just launched last week, so it's brand new, and I had my first book event last night in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So it was wonderful. It was kind of like the hometown event to launch it all. And I'm leaving in a few days to go on the road, and I'll be in LA, your part of the world, on Tuesday the 19th for an event at the Last Bookstore. And then I on my website and on Facebook, all my events are listed. So really my time right now is really focused on Big Love and on, getting the book out there and sharing that message. And yeah.
Great. Well, anything we didn't touch on or that you want to share on how we can live bigger, better, and, really heal ourselves from love? Any take-home points, or I like to say anything that we haven't touched on, or that you can say to anyone that's just starting out on this journey? Final words of wisdom or advice?
Sure. There's so much that could be said about all of it, but I would say to people, just starting out or wherever you are on this journey, to remember you're not alone. That's helped me so much in my life, especially when I've been in the darker, more painful places, to remember that the struggle is real and you are not alone in your struggle. And I really want to encourage people to be gentle with yourself. Our minds naturally go to self-abuse, and the inner critic is brutal, but especially if you're starting out on a path of healing and growth and more self-awareness, you're going to become more aware of the parts about yourself that you don't like as much. So it's really important to just be gentle and to remember you're human like all of us.
It's Scott Stabile, author of the new release, Big Love, available bookstores worldwide. I'm your host, Steve Prusak, and thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Except if you're with us in the Academy here, and this is your chance to ask some questions, so you go ahead and type them in the chat room, or if you want to join us on video, just raise your hand. I see we've got a couple people in here, Karen and Jacqueline. If either one of you want to come on video and connect with Scott and myself and ask Scott some questions about Big Love, this is really exciting. Or if you're just feeling shy and want to type in a question or anything, just here's the chat room, and I'm going to go ahead and type in there, make sure you guys can see it.
Hi, Karen. Hi, Jacqueline.
Any questions before we close? Are there any questions? And if you are in the Academy and watching the replay, then just go ahead and type in your question below, and I'll connect with Scott. As you know, you have access to our guests, and we can get your questions answered for you. Let's see. Jacqueline said, what or who was your inspiration for this book?
My inspiration, the who, what I said earlier, I would say, was just wanting to put something out there into the world for everyone who is, struggling to make sense of this unpredictable world, and wanting to love themselves more, and wanting to show up in their lives with more compassion and more love in their hearts. The what, as far as the inspiration, in part, my Facebook community. My Facebook community has grown a lot over the past years, and that's been the place that I've been sharing myself and talking about my fears and insecurities. And there's been so much support there, and in seeing, again, how alike we all are. So they've kept me really on task. I'd say, like, over the past 5 years, there have maybe been 3 days in 5 years that I haven't posted or connected to my Facebook page in some way. And that's kept me really inspired. And yeah.
See, there's a question that came in over here. Scott, will you be writing more books in the future?
Oh, sure. But I'm not thinking about that at all right now. I should say I expect that I'll be writing more books in the future. I enjoyed the process of writing this book. I mean, it was brutal and provoked a lot of fears as well, but mostly it was enjoyable, and I would love to write more in the future, but not right now.
Great. Well, we're going to close out. Scott, I'm going to try to make it out to your book signing if I can get away from the office.
Please.
But thank you for connecting with us and being part of the community. I'll send you a link to the show when we put it up. Maybe your people on Facebook might want to have a look at this awesome interview. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Steve. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
And to you in the community, thank you for being here, and we'll see you next. Oh, wait, was there one more? Oh, Jacqueline just followed up. Wow, you're really committed to the synergy of Facebook, and I'm into it too.
Oh, cool. Well, come say hello, Jacqueline, on my page.
Awesome. Thank you again, and thank you, Scott.
Okay.
Thank you.
You too, Steve. Thank you.